we want to welcome Amanza Walton-Desir to our broadcast. And Amanza, for those of you who do not know, you've been living on the rock. Amanza is the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Corporations. Amanza, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me.
Amanza, we live in a country where, in colloquial terms, you just got to hear a word and you know the whole story. Two editorials out of Starbuck News of recent vintage tells us the whole story in this country. On Sunday, the editorial was undermining institutions, and in broad
Yes.
strokes, it told of institutions that the PPP civic government has not been faithful to, and you, of all persons, know if they can't control an institution, they undermine it, they try to destroy it. We've seen it in several NDCs, municipalities. This attitude of the PPP
Hmm.
on full display. And then today's editorial was notes on Dharamlall, notes on Nigel Dharamlall. This is the PPP minister who recently resigned under the pressure of the allegations of rape and sodomy of a 16-year-old. Amanda, they tell the whole story. And the PPP has been managing for the last few days and weeks, if not months, from crisis to crisis. Where are we tackling any given order? Sunday's editorial, yesterday's editorial.
Look, Sharon, the reality is that we are pre 2015, except with loads of money in the economy. I think that is where we can succinctly say that we are. Pre 2015, what we saw was the complete breakdown of our institutions. We saw the complete corruption of the police force. We saw crime at an all time high. We saw Guyana being transformed into a narco state. We saw us slipping on the corruption index. And as if it were deja vu, we are right back there. It's the same old PPP, the same old playbook. And Guyanese can simply expect more of the same because this is the nature of Barajaglio and his cabal. We have always been saying in the opposition that the key to a strong democracy are the key is strong institutions. That is the cornerstone of a strong democratic society. And I think over the course of the 5 years, the 3 effective years more or less of the AP and UFC administration, what we saw was a commitment to valuing and building up institutions. What you're seeing now is the tearing down of those institutions, and it has placed Guyana on a path of full democratic backslide. We are in full blown democratic backslide. And Starbuck News made a very important observation. So, what we have happening is the undermining of our institutions by this current PPPC administration. And it's being done deliberately. What is happening in effect is that they're setting up a cult of personality leadership style. And that is the precursor to totalitarianism and dictatorship. But Irfan Ali is doing it in such a manner that he is hoping that the people of Guyana we do not recognize what they're doing. And so he's coming under the guise of, oh, he likes to be in contact directly with the people. The example that was given is so important.
Yeah,
He wants to deal directly with the teachers,
yeah,
bypassing an important organization like the Teachers Union.
correct.
And
And
he is
Savagos took him to
hoping,
task on that.
yeah, and
Savagos took him
he's
to task on that, saying if he has to consult with teachers, he has to visit 1,000 institutions across this country.
and correctly so, because the unions were set up to represent the interests of the teachers. And these unions really are an important um, check and balance in terms of the power dynamic in our country. And so to bypass them, but on the face of it, because you love people so much and you want to make sure that you interact with people directly, they're hoping that we do not recognize what their true intention is. But we recognize it, and we've been calling it out from the time we entered the National Assembly. We pointed out how they gutted the Public Accounts Committee, the quorum requirement. And for over 20 meetings, the government was absent, forcing those meetings to be adjourned. We spoke as well about the manner in which they gutted the EPA, such an important regulatory body, given the fact that we are now a petro state, completely gutted of the experience and knowledgeable personnel. So, this tendency of this Irfan Ali administration is simply a continuation of what we saw pre 2015. You will recall they had the notoriety for implementing IMCs in the municipalities instead of duly elected representatives within the community. It was the AP and UAFC that reintroduced local government elections here. And in fact, over the 5 year period, would have had two local government elections. So there's not a commitment to institutions from this PPPC administration, and that is dangerous. And it is dangerous because strong institutions, that is the cornerstone to a strong democracy. It is imperative that as a nation, we have strong institutions that are able to provide a check and balance between the people and the state.
I'm happy that you've said that, because one of the reasons why we use Tabuk News is that kind of middle of the road newspaper. We disagree with them on occasions, but by and large, they're heading in the right direction as a journalistic entity locally. And here on the second day, this is Sunday into Monday now. Sunday you have undermining institutions, and they're talking about the PP government. On Monday, notes on the Dharamlall case. And if there's any case or any example of undermining of institutions, you have the CPA, the Child Protection Agency, which operates under the aegis of the administration. You have several other organizations that came into contact with CPA. You got the DPP's office, and all of the bizarre contortions of this
Mhm.
case, where these damning allegations were laid before the PPP's minister, Nigel Dharamlall, foreign minister. So it's on full display for Guyanese.
It is on full display. And when we were in school, teachers would provide us examples to explain a concept. The Dharamlal saga is an example of how eroded our institutions are. Prime example, a case study in what happens when our institutions are deliberately undermined, particularly by government. Sharon, it is dangerous. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, I think it is Goal 16, speaks about just and peaceful society. And it takes pains to point out the importance of having those strong institutions. In the Dharamlal saga, you saw the failure of the CPA, the Child Protection Agency. You saw
Correct.
the failure of the DPP. You saw the failure of the Guyana police force. So it was on full display for all Guyanese to see. And I keep making the point that it may be advantageous for those who benefit from the undermining of our institutions now, but it will lead us down the road of becoming a failed state. And so we have to arrest this decline now, or else our children, as we are cautioned, we will eat sour grapes and our children's teeth are going to be set on edge. As citizens, we have a duty. Look, the meaning of democracy is ruled by the people. And what it means is that in a democratic society, people rule either through their elected representatives or directly. As it is, we have a representational system. In the National Assembly, you have close to 50% of the population represented by the opposition. And what you see is the PPPC administration excluding the opposition from very, very important issues,
Yeah.
contrary to Article 13, which calls for an inclusionary democracy.
Mhm. Far from
So,
it.
in essence, they are excluding the people. But what they have been good at doing is masking this as if it is the opposition, a core of 31 persons who are somehow just the 31 persons, not realizing that we represent in excess of 220,000 Guyanese.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're effectively shutting that segment of the population out from decision making. And whilst we may think that it is cute today, Sherrod, we are going down a road that will lead to certain destruction. Because when you add the inflationary effect of all of this money that is now in the economy, and I'm talking here now in terms of the socioeconomic context, everything is magnified. Money is a magnifier. So if you corrupt, more money, you're more corrupt. If
Hmm.
there's decadence, more money, there's more
Yeah.
decadence.
Yeah.
Money is simply an amplifier. And so, with
Correct.
all of this money in the economy, what you're seeing are the ills that we have allowed to fester in this nation being magnified. And we, the people, have to arrest it.
Hmm. Hmm. Very much so. You know, Amanza, you mentioned the dynamics between the opposition and government. It's a point I was mentioning to our viewers early on in Turks and Caicos Islands, where I am currently. There's one opposition member. The public here really voted against the last administration in February of this year due to the poor management of COVID-19. One of the key things is the amount of COVID grants they give to the hotel industry and none to the people. And they said that was one of the decisive things they were voted out of office. But even in that context, and we see too the demonstrative in Barbados, where you had two elections where Mayor won, the Prime Minister there, Mayor Motley won outright there in Barbados. You still see an engaging of the opposition. And there's a point that Sabuk News made. The PPP thinks that they can bypass the opposition and go directly to their supporters. The editorial pointed out that they got a rude awakening in the last local government elections.
Mhm. And this is so because I think one of the key takeaways for me from the last LG is that despite the money that was thrown at the local government elections at people at the last minute, attempting to literally buy votes, the people of Guyana demonstrated a certain level of consciousness.
Mhm.
And that is what keeps me hopeful because we're seeing a people who are able to cut through issues and who are discerning of motives and who are discerning of intentions. And I think that augurs well for our future politics. What we need to see is stepped up and enhanced civic participation, enhanced participation from citizenry, and understanding that at a fundamental level, we as politicians are literally here to serve you. We are
Correct.
your representatives.
Correct.
You look at
Correct.
the etymology of the word minister, it means just that, to serve and help.
Yeah.
And so we have to begin to shrug off this understanding that as a people, we are here to be used by government. The government is the servant of the people, and we have to continue to emphasize that. And we have to hold any government, including an APNU AFC government, accountable to that fact.
True and correct. Amanza, before we go on the foreign front in foreign affairs, recently there were some scathing articles in all the media here about this government and their foreign policy stance, the fact that it is so incoherent if it exists at all. We saw some pushback from them. One of the interesting things that we saw in them kind of summing up where they are in foreign relations is that they're on good terms with their neighbors. I don't think he might say that of Venezuela. I don't think he might even say that of Suriname. And we saw all of the whining and dining of Santoki. But what is there to show for that? You know, they were supposed to give us some licenses almost a year ago. Irfan is still having, is still waiting. Is still the man in waiting. He's now off to China. And, lots of us at this end, I'm sure you are this way as well. We're at the edge of our seats, popcorn and the cokes in hand.
Look, I'll say this: the PPP has not been able to adumbrate a coherent foreign policy because they are by and large transactional. And when you are transactional in your foreign relations, it leads to incoherence. So I am not surprised that they've not been able to set that out. They did a very poor job of defending against the criticisms because it could never be that we have invitations from over 50 states, that is an indicator of your foreign policy success. It means that you are now an interesting state, and for very obvious reasons. We have oil.
Mhm. Correct.
So it's no feather in the cap of this administration that he is so invited. There are geopolitical reasons for Guyana being at the table. Having said that, this is why it is very, very important for us as a nation to determine what our national interest is, because failing to properly define our national interest will lead to us being blown, pulled, and tugged to and fro. And this is what is happening to the current administration because they have not been able to articulate what the national interest is. And they haven't been able to do that because they are transactional. Now, of course, as a head of state, you are expected to conduct state visits. The issue that I have with this, however, is that on their return to Guyana, the people of Guyana are not given a proper briefing as to what transpired. So we don't know what was traded away. We don't know what the negotiations were. And Irfan Ali doesn't go there in his own right. He goes
Yeah.
as a representative of the people of Guyana.
The sad thing is that they think it's about them. It's about the
And
PPP
they
and their
think that this
policies
is
that
about
has brought them
them.
before great men.
Exactly. And so this headiness that you see characterizing their interactions on the foreign policy front is dangerous. It requires now more than ever that we have a sober, well thought out approach, bipartisan even, to our foreign policy
Yeah.
of paramount importance. So I would hope that when the president returns from China, because I will be asking in the National Assembly for a briefing through the Foreign Relations, the Sectoral Committee on Foreign Relations, so that Guyanese can understand what did you go there to say on our behalf? What did you gain? We deserve to know. Irfan is not going there to represent Irfan. He's going there to represent us as the people of Guyana.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about asking that in the National Assembly as we go. And I want to be facetious and say as if you're allowed to ask that because we seem to be getting more and more restrictive as a National Assembly. Quite recently, we saw Tabitha Sarabo Haley, our colleague, a member of Parliament, wanted to ask about what's happening there with the Niger Dam issue. Wanted to make a statement on that. Prevented. He isn't here, so he can't defend himself. Roysdale Ford, a senior council member of parliament or a colleague as well, wanted to raise the issue of what's happening with the families at Madia. That was shut down. We seem to be becoming more and more of a restrictive parliament.
And
So
and
it's
and
so, so it's not only that we are meeting intermittently if there's any pattern to be had even there, but when we meet, we can't even discuss the pertinent issues of the day. My God.
and this is why it is always for me a struggle as to why bother. But then you remember that people elected you to represent them.
Yeah.
And so that is what keeps us going back to the National Assembly. The PPP is unabashed about them going whenever they need money. They have no qualms about it. And so this is what it has descended into. put in parliament so they could go dip their hand into the patrimony of the people of Guyana. The fact that the Speaker of the National Assembly, the fact that the Speaker of the National Assembly would disallow a moment of silence
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
20 young children that we lost.
Yeah.
My God,
That's the final nail in the tomb, as them boys would say.
where are we as a nation?
Yeah.
Doesn't
And they
he have,
probably go and parade in China as though he's
doesn't
National
he have
Democratic President.
grandchildren?
Yeah.
Eh? It is as if he spat on the tombs of
Yeah.
those children.
Yeah.
This is the greatest tragedy in our recent history, and you cannot allow
Yeah. Because
a
the politics
moment's
is wasted.
silence.
Yeah.
Not only
That
should
is to
he
give
not,
that is to give the opposition an advantage.
not only should he have allowed it, Sherrod, but he ought to have ensured that every child's name was called out and recorded in the Hansard so that they are memorialized appropriately. Those children didn't ask to be in that dorm. They were sent into the custody
Yeah.
of the state.
Yeah. And
They
even
were in
in
the
death.
custody of the state when they died. And you dare to say that you cannot. I found it, you know what? The speaker has lost any shred of respect that I had remaining for him.
Yeah. Correct.
Because
That was the
it was
most
tantamount to spitting on the graves of those children.
dancing around a little bit too. And what has eluded them in their life, in their lifetime, eluded them even in death. A
Eluded
caring
them in death.
administration.
The respect,
A minute of silence.
the
Wow.
dignity. You understand?
Yeah.
It,
That
it
is
is
very bad.
something that disturbed me so deeply that I left the National Assembly
Yeah.
because I couldn't understand that as a nation we could allow someone to be so callous. If
Yeah.
we as a people don't demand better, Sherrod, then we of all men are most miserable and will be most miserable because we will live in a Guyana where we drop the ball and where we fail to curb excesses and where we failed to speak out against what was wrong because it was being done by one of us.
Yeah. 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 In Shakespeare, I think it's Julius Caesar. It was either Mark Antony or was it Brutus, who was eulogizing Caesar and reflecting on the horrors that was Caesar's death. He says, "My spirit has left me, and I must pause while it comes back to me."
While
Let
it
us
comes back to
pause.
me,
Let us
because
pause while our
because
spirit comes back to us.
because it grieves
Yeah.
you that we could lose our humanity in this manner. I
Yeah.
hope to God that the Speaker at the next sitting of the National Assembly returns to redeem himself.
Mhm. We live in a time of spirits. I hope his spirit come back because like it left. You know,
Well,
here we are.
we are in a bad state, but I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because I've seen the people of Guyana speak against the PPP
Mm.
once before
Yeah,
in recent
defensively too.
history, and the people of Guyana will do it again, and the PPP will find out that you can do what you like, but never for as long as you
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Let's end on that note. Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Amanza Walton-Desir. It has been a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Sharon.